Hi, everybody. Brad Truax here again from Eastman's Woodlands and Wildlife Committee. And today we're going to talk about a walk in the woods. So, again, are you ready for some exercise? Are you ready to jog a little bit? Well, if you are, this presentation is not for you. Your walk in the woods should be slow and deliberate so you can appreciate all the wildlife in the woodland. You'll use all your senses to appreciate both the woodland and the wildlife. And remember, you don't have to do it all in one session. You'll find that doing the same path can be surprisingly different depending on the season that you take it or even the time of day that you take it. Walks in the woods likely have both physical and mental health benefits. The Japanese have long promoted forest bathing. And interestingly, the French College of General Medicine is currently preparing a brochure titled Nature Prescriptions. And they acknowledge that there's now definite evidence that spending time in nature provides both physical and psychological benefits. It reduces stress, relieves anxiety, and actually has an antidepressant effect. Spending time in nature provides benefits that are comparable to those of physical activity, which itself has similar effects to the effects of some antidepressants. So, exposure to nature lowers blood pressure, may reduce cardiovascular mortality, and improve diabetes outcomes, and may, in fact, boost some immune functions. The underlying mechanisms remain poorly studied, but at least some of the benefit is probably related to reduced levels of cortisol, which is known as the stress hormone. So, a walk in the woods, you may want to do one walk to focus on trees and plants, and another to focus on wildlife. But in fact, there's no reason you can't do both together. We're often asked to lead walks to identify trees. Well, that's fine, but the real value of a tree identification walk is to explain what each tree means for wildlife or for the greater ecology of the forest. So here are some suggestions for your walk in the woods. First of all, dress for the weather and the season. Remember, particularly in the fall, to wear blaze orange during hunting season. And make sure that you dress to avoid tick bites. Use all your senses. Look, listen, smell, and maybe even touch cautiously. Know what wildlife is likely in your area. Bring pocket cards that have pictures of tracks, scat, or tree identification. Bring something to measure with. Those pocket cards that have pictures of tracks typically have a 5-inch ruler at the side, and you can use that to measure the tracks or whatever else you've identified. You can use an app on your smartphone like iNaturalist or iTrack Wildlife Pro. And don't forget your camera. Cell phones take great pictures, and most also tag the photos with GPS coordinates so that you can share your findings with other people. Bring your binoculars, keep a journal, learn how to create a mold of a track if you're really interested in tracks. Bring your friends, and most importantly, respect the wildlife. And use your imagination, but don't let it fool you. Okay, here's something I show in multiple presentations. This is from the Eco Explorer website. It's what to do if you encounter an animal, and it's the rule of thumb. So basically, what you do is hold your arm out and put your thumb in front between you and the animal. And if you can't fully block out the animal, you're probably too close to that animal. Good rule of thumb. Location, location, location. Well, where you are may help you identify trees. Shade intolerant trees like birch and aspen need to grow where they're going to get lots of sunlight. So they tend to grow adjacent to open fields or adjacent to streams, lakes, or wetlands. On the other hand, shade tolerant trees like hemlock, spruce, sugar maple tend to grow under tall canopies that actually do block out much sunlight. And moist bog-like areas are good for species like hemlock. Pioneer species like birch, aspen, and black cherry are likely to be seen in areas where natural disasters have recently occurred and have removed some of those thick canopies. So again, location is also important in telling you what wildlife is likely. Red foxes like open fields, but gray foxes like the forest. Semi-aquatic mammals are found near wetlands or streams, but other mammals like raccoons also like water. Porcupines like areas that have lots of hemlocks. Beaver dams are great spots for seeing all sorts of wildlife. And stone walls are favorite spots for bobcats and some other species. You should also know your wildlife corridors. For example, here in New Hampshire, you can go to the Fish and Game website, and there's a wildlife corridor map that can tell you where many animals are likely to move about. Here's the link to that site. And here's the kind of map that you might be able to download. This happens to be a map of Eastman Lake, and these orange lines are the corridors, wildlife corridors. So they can tell you where you're likely to encounter much wildlife. And you can see that here at Eastman, we have a ton of areas that have considerable wildlife. Use technology wisely. Again, there are several apps that are available for your smartphone that can help you identify plants. That would be things like iNaturalist, Seek, PlantNet, PlantSnap, LeafSnap, Picture This. iPhones also have a visual lookup function that's extremely valuable, can help you identify both plants and animals. And I'll show you that in a little more detail. And on newer iPhones, if you press the camera control button on the right side and point it at something, and then tap the visual intelligence lookup results at the top of the screen. So again, here's the iPhone visual lookup. You take a picture, okay, could be a picture of a plant or a bug or an animal or many other things. And then you look down at the bottom, and there's this little thing. Here's the blow up. It's a little eye that's surrounded by a circle and a plus sign. And if you press that little icon, Apple will tell you what it thinks you're looking at in that photo. And it's surprisingly accurate. iNaturalist is another great app to have. It allows you to identify not only plants, but also insects and animals. You can record what you're seeing, learn about it, and then importantly, you can contribute what you found. So again, iNaturalist lets you take that picture of a plant or a bug or an animal. It identifies it for you, and then you can share it or save it to the iNaturalist website. Here at Eastman, we participate in the Grantham Biodiversity Project. And when you share or save it, it actually goes to a map. It has a geographic location that's displayed so that other people can go to the website and find out where whatever you identified is located. Very important function. In terms of tree identification, there are several things that we look at when we are trying to identify a tree. We look at whether it has needles or leaves, whether it's deciduous or coniferous. What's the branching pattern? Does it have an opposite branching pattern or an alternate branching pattern? You'll recall that there are really only four main tree types that have an opposite branching pattern, and we use the mnemonic MAD horse. MAD horse stands for M is maple, A is for ash, D is for dogwood, and horse chestnut. So those are the ones that have an opposite branching pattern. And the leaf pattern, is it a simple or a compound pattern? Or what's the pattern of the needles? What are the stem characteristics? Are they round or flat? What does the bark look like? And does it produce blossoms? And does it produce fruits, seeds, or nuts? And you can use tree identification keys that ask you some simple questions and lead you to correct tree identification. So such dichotomous keys are readily available online or for purchase. So again, these dichotomous keys ask you simple questions. So the first question might be, is the branching pattern alternate or opposite? Then the second question might be, is the leaf pattern simple or a compound? And it keeps asking you these questions until you get to the ultimate identification of that tree. And you can find some of these dichotomous keys online, or you can purchase a simple one like this tree finder that only costs a few dollars. So again, our woodlands and wildlands are teeming with wildlife, but sometimes we don't see some of that wildlife. Some animals and birds are nocturnal, others are crepuscular. That means they're active at dusk and dawn. Others are shy and simply avoid humans. Others intentionally avoid humans. Many are very well camouflaged, making it difficult to see them. So, how do we know that they're out there? And the answer is by the clues that they leave. And we collectively refer to those clues as sign. Okay, so what are some examples of sign? Well, obviously, animal tracks, either the footprints or the track patterns, the scat that they leave, pellets of undigested food, tree markings, rubs or scrapes, scent markings, broken twigs or bushes, game trails, bones or carcasses or remains of an animal, feathers, tunnels, caves, depressions in the snow where an animal may have laid down, spike-like trunks that the beavers leave, plants that were browsed by deer or moose, and of course, sounds and smells. So tracks are usually the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about sign. And a fresh coat of snow often uncovers a treasure trove of tracks, but snow melting can sometimes obscure or distort the tracks and make them difficult to interpret. Tracks that are left in sand or mud are usually much more detailed. And the patterns of tracks may provide much more information than the actual individual track prints. They can often tell us what the animal was actually doing. And keep in mind that you shouldn't disturb the tracks that you find. Leave them for others to see. And uh, we're not going to talk about tracks further in this video. We refer you to our separate video on animal tracks. There's the link to the video that's on the Eastman YouTube page. But I mentioned the pocket guides. Here's a pocket guide from New Hampshire Fish and Game that you can keep. Here's one from Mass Wildlife. And I mentioned before that they often have a ruler along the edge, and you can use that to measure tracks. You can also use an app on your smartphone like iTrack Wildlife. I particularly like this one because not only does it help you identify the track, but it usually tells you a little bit about the animal. Okay, scat is one of the most common signs that you're going to see of wildlife. And the shape, the color, the texture, the size, and the contents of the scat are clues to who left that scat. Scat can tell us what the animal ate, and that in turn can tell us what the animal likely left it. And where the scat was is an important clue as to who left that scat. So here's again a typical pocket guide that you can download that shows you various scat. And scat depends on diet. For instance, this is showing bear scat. And bear scat in the springtime, when they're eating mainly grasses and insects, it usually has some green color to it, and it's usually tubular. But then in the summer, when there are lots of berries available, it becomes much softer, and it'll have many of the seeds that still show from the berries that they've been eating. And then again in the fall, when they're eating grasses and plants again, and ultimately acorns, the scat becomes much firmer once again. This is showing coyote scat, and this darker coyote scat usually means it had a recent kill. The darker color likely is from the blood and the organs of the animal that it killed, but you can still see the hairs that indicate they've been eating a lot of particularly small mammals or possibly a deer. Uh, Coyote scat is often rope-like, tapered, and spongy, and it's often gray colored and filled with the hair and the bones of the small rodents, as opposed to the previous slide, which showed them after they ate a recent kill. And very interestingly, coyotes often place their scat right in the middle of trails or in the middle of a dirt road or a trail road intersection. Red fox scat often looks like coyote scat, but it's usually lighter and more twisted than either dog scat or coyote scat. Uh, but both fox and coyote scat usually have fur and small bones in it because they're eating mainly small mammals. And the fox scat may also have some berries and seeds in it. Bobcat scat is cylindrical, it's highly segmented, it's often about an inch in diameter, and they often deposit it in a scrape left by their hind feet. So this was a scrape that was left in the mud by the feet of a bobcat, and here the scat again is highly segmented and it's cylindrical. Raccoon scat, even though the color and consistency may vary with their diet, it's usually tubular and has these blocky ends. And that's very important to recognize. This scat is often found at the base of the trees that the raccoon is climbing, or it's found in latrines. Raccoons often scat in the same place in what we call latrines, or multiple raccoons will come back and scat in that same place. So again, latrines are very common. But it's important that you recognize this as raccoon scat because you should not touch it, don't pick it apart, and don't smell it. And that's because it may contain a parasitic roundworm that's dangerous to humans. The location of scat is very important as a clue to who left it. Porcupines tend to leave their scat right outside their den. Members of the weasel family like to leave their scat on elevated surfaces like tree trunks or flat rocks. And raccoons and river otters often repeatedly leave their scat in the same spot in what we call latrines. And as before, we mentioned coyotes often leave their scat right in the middle of trails or dirt roads. So again, some animals were using this tree stump as a latrine. You can actually see several forms of scat there. And then once again, fox, weasels, mink, and raccoons often defecate on tree stumps. And here it looks like coyotes and bobcats actually decided to make this tree stump a nice latrine. As before, members of the weasel family like to leave their scat on elevated places, so particularly rocks or tree stumps. And here's an example of scat that's on top of a flat rock. And if you look very carefully, you can see some things here that look like quills. So again, this was likely scat from a fisher. If you remember from our presentations on both fishers and porcupines, the main predator of the porcupine is the fisher. So in fact, this was probably scat that was left on the top of a rock by a fisher. Here's a porcupine scat right outside the den. Porcupines, again, live in dens that might be in a cave or a rock crevice or the hollow of a tree. And the hallmark of the porcupine den is lots of scat left right outside the den. So particularly once the winter starts and the snow is outside, the porcupine may just come out of the den briefly and defecate there. And this leads to very large piles of scat right outside the porcupine den. Here's an interesting puzzle. One winter day I was out on a hike and I saw this. So there are multiple yellow spots here. Here's the blow up of that. Lots of yellow spots that are outside this beaver dam. So again, what could possibly cause this? Well, trees sometimes will have spots of brown or yellow beneath them. That's caused by release of tannins. An animal or group of animals conceivably could have left some urine here. And sometimes if you're out walking in the slush, you'll sometimes see that the footprints you left have kind of a yellow discoloration to it. And last of all, since this is a beaver dam, it's possible that a beaver could have left castoreum here, although they seldom would leave multiple spots of castoreum. So these were not there the previous day. A little further down that path along the trail, I saw this right at the edge of the trail. And this is obviously coyote scat. You can see lots of hair in here. So when I saw this, I contacted the person who takes care of our game cam. One of our game cams is trained directly on that beaver dam I mentioned. So I asked him, the previous night, did you see any evidence of coyote activity? And in fact, it confirmed that there were coyotes out the night before. So the top one shows a coyote. The bottom one also shows that coyote moving forward. So these were the night before all those yellow spots were out there. Very interesting. Sometimes animals regurgitate undigested foods in the form of pellets. This pellet is from an owl, and you can see what the owl had been eating. So you see lots of bones, lots of fur, and obviously that was from a small animal that was not so lucky. Many animals mark their presence by scent. The scent can be left by their urine or from special glands in the anal region, or even from some scent glands that are located in their paws. So they may scent mark to tell others, hey, this is my territory, stay away. But they often scent mark to advertise themselves as potential mates during mating season. So again, here's a good example. This is a video of a bobcat. This was courtesy of Amy Hoffman here at Eastman. And you can see that this bobcat both smells the scent and then leaves some scent of its own. So here he's going down. He's sniffing at some scent that was left. Now he's going to turn around and he's going to leave some scent of his own. So this is a bobcat scenting. Okay, coyotes also scent mark for mating purposes. Now, coyotes mate from January to early March. And if you look carefully, you can see some blood tinged urine that was left by a coyote here. The female coyote in the pre-estrus period that actually starts in mid-December will leave these spots of urine that are blood tinged in the snow. And it's basically advertising itself for mating purposes. Beaver scent mounds, you may be lucky enough to see one of these in the springtime. The beavers mix castoreum, which is that yellow substance that's excreted from glands that are located near the anus of the beaver, and they'll mix that castoreum with urine, and they excrete it into these mounds that are made of mud and leaves and debris from the bottom of the beaver pond. And these castor mounds are actually serve two purposes. One, it tells other beavers, hey, this is my territory, stay away. But it also advertises that this beaver is looking for a mate. And the mounds can be up to 3 feet tall, but usually they're shorter than that. And they're usually built in the springtime. So you may be lucky enough if you're out on a hike near a beaver pond or a wetland in the early spring to see a scent mound. Various depressions in the ground or the snow may tell you about an animal. So again, these could be a spot where an animal bedded down for the night or just rested temporarily. Could be from a deer, a bear, or a moose. You might also see a bobcat sit down. So this was actually a bear bedding area that was left in the grass. Here is a deer bed that was left in the snow. Here's a moose bed. Now, not only is this bigger than the deer bed in the snow, it also has some blood tinge. And that's because moose in the winter are infested with winter ticks that cause considerable bleeding in the moose. And here is a bobcat sit down. So a bobcat often sits on its haunches while it's stalking prey. So you can picture what you would likely see underneath that bobcat. And here's what you would see. You see the two hind paws here. Here you see where the belly or the haunches were sitting. And here you see their two front paws. So this is a classic bobcat sit down. So what if you see blood in the snow? Well, it could mean that some unfortunate bird or mammal met its demise at the hands of a larger predator. It could have other causes. Again, it might be from that female coyote leaving a blood-tinged urine spot in the snow. Could be from that moose that was so infested with winter ticks that the bleeding was showing in the site where the moose bedded down. Scrapes are made by animals with their feet before they deposit scent. So some animals use their feet to scrape an area and then they deposit scent. This is actually left by a deer. So the deer used its hooves to create roughly a 1 to 3 foot wide area of where it scraped out leaves and debris. And then the deer urinated down its legs, and that urine going down its legs picked up some scent molecules from its tarsal glands, and they deposited in the scrape. And this is used mainly for mating purposes. Bears leave signs on trees. So again, here's a human hand that's showing how a bear would have used its claws to claw this tree. This is showing a aspen or a birch tree that typically has some horizontal markings, but then you see these vertical markings that were left by the claws of the bear. So why do bears mark trees? Well, actually, bears of either sex or any age can mark their scent on trees or on utility poles or signposts. But the majority of marking is by mature males during mating season. And they'll rub their shoulders and their neck and crown, and they'll turn around and claw and bite at the tree. And they may also enlarge a woodpecker hole with their claws to get at some insects or eggs that were inside. And there may be another benefit for bears rubbing trees. The tar that they might get from a beech tree sticks to their fur, and it's water resistant. And some people think it might be an effective tick repellent. Here's another sign of bear activity. Down at the base of this tree is where there was a wasp nest, and the bears were foraging in it. So this hole that's left is all that's left of where that wasp nest was. You don't actually see the nest because the mother bear actually ate the wasp nest. Another sign of bear activity, bears love to forage for insects in rotting logs. And their powerful claws will rip open large sections of the log. And they actually break off these large pieces of the log. Very powerful claws. Porcupines leave signs on trees. They eat away the bark. And it's not only bears and porcupines that leave these denuded sections of bark on trees. This is actually due to a deer rubbing its antlers on the tree. And bucks do this both to mark their territory and to polish their antlers. So this is showing rubs that were left by a buck. So again, on both these trees. So anytime that bucks have antlers, they will leave these rubs, but it does peak during the pre-rut and it's maintained throughout the breeding season. And again, they're marking with the antlers, but they also rub their forehead gland on the tree to leave specific information about themselves, mainly for mating purposes. You might see some sawdust in the woods. Well, sawdust or wood chips at the base of a tree are mostly due to woodpeckers. Again, here you see lots of sawdust, and this was from a woodpecker. But over here, you're seeing a lot of sawdust that was left by either ants or beetles in this rotting log. And beavers and porcupines usually leave larger wood chips. So here you're seeing some wood chips that were left by beavers. And note lots of wood chips. Also note this sculpture that was left by the beavers. Signs of beaver activity you might see on a walk in the woods are wood chips, gnawed tree spikes. and wood, freshly chewed saplings, the beaver dams, the beaver lodges, either open water lodges or bank lodges, canals, scent mounds, beaver slides, beaver tracks. And if you're lucky, you might hear a beaver trail slap, or you might actually see a beaver. So here are some signs of beaver activity. This was at the edge of one of our wetlands. Here's a trail. This happens to be the Yellow Trail in Heath Forest. And here you see a fairly large tree stump that was gnawed by the beaver. But you also see these spikes. These are very sharp. There are numerous small spikes. Beavers especially like trees that are 3 inches in diameter or less. So they actually got these several areas. And these, we were very concerned about these. They were very sharp, and we were concerned that hikers might actually fall on one of these spikes and impale themselves. So we actually went out and we had to cut these down so that they were no longer sharp and served as danger to hikers. Here's the Beaver Lodge. This happens to be a bank lodge. You might see the Beaver Lodge. And again, the entrances are underwater, and the living space for the beavers is above the level of the water. You might see evidence of deer browsing. The image at the right shows typical deer browse. The one at the left shows something that would be left by a rabbit or a rodent that has incisors on both jaws. So typically, what the rodent or the rabbit leaves is a very clean cut, whereas over here, what's left by the deer is a very ragged edge. Game trails are typically left by larger animals like deer, and they may trample the grass as they walk through it. So here you're seeing over at our wetland, which exists up north above the Eastman Lake. In that wetland, you see a large area that was trampled down, probably by a deer. You might see holes in the ground or trees that actually indicate an animal's den or burrow. So again, if you look down here, that's a great spot for some sort of animal to be living in. And if you see this, you also ought to look around the back because you may find several other holes that serve as alternative exits for that animal who was living in that den. And again, cavities in trees. Snags are basically standing dead trees, and they're very important areas for wildlife. So again, you might see several cavities in that tree. And the cavities and hollows or the broken tops of snags are important habitat for birds, bats, or even small mammals to live in. You might also come across a cache of nuts. Again, many animals cache food, particularly nuts, in preparation for winter. So squirrels cache acorns and other hard mast. The red squirrel typically has a single cache, but the gray squirrel often has multiple caches. Blue jays also tend to cache nuts like acorns. Blue jays are actually one of the most important ways that acorns propagate into oak trees. So again, squirrels may leave piles of shells from nuts that they cracked open. These are called middens, and they are the shells of acorns or other nuts, and they're characteristic of squirrels. Fur and feathers might be left over from an encounter between an animal or a bird and a larger predator. And similarly, bones may be all that's left of a predator's meal. Coyotes in particular tend to leave in their scat the fur and bones that they leave in the middle of the trails. And eggshells might be from hatched birds or turtles, or they might be left when the predator found the eggs. So here's some turtle eggs, Snapping turtles left these eggs, and hopefully the live turtles emerged from these eggs. But keep in mind that predators like raccoons, fox, and skunks like turtle nests and may actually eat the eggs. Okay, how about sounds of the wild? So sometimes you can't see the animals, but you can hear them. So you might hear a barred owl hooting, or you might hear a coyote howling. Here you're actually hearing several coyotes hooting and howling. Or you might hear a red fox screaming. Often this terrifying scream is attributed to the fisher. It's actually not. It's actually caused by the red fox. Or you might hear the loons calling. That's actually the yodel of a male loon. You might hear chattering of a red squirrel. Or you might hear the squawk of a great blue heron. I'm also often disappointed. Great blue herons are beautiful, majestic birds. And then you hear this awful sound that they make. Quite a disappointment. Here are all those sounds that you might hear. And don't forget to look up when you're out there. If you don't look up, you might miss that barred owl or porcupine that's up in a tree. But just looking up can give you a unique perspective on the forest. Years ago, we were on a tree hike at Vins, and our guide had us lie down on our backs and look up. And this is what we saw. Now, we don't recommend that you lie down on your back anymore, mainly because of the danger of ticks, but you can still get the idea just simply by looking up. And don't forget to look down. Looking down is where you're going to see animal tracks or scat, but you might also see a salamander, particularly under a rock or under some leaf litter. And if you see lots of hemlock branches on the ground, it might tell you that there's a porcupine lurking nearby. And don't forget smells. You're much more likely to smell a skunk than to see one. Remember, skunks are mainly nocturnal animals. The very fishy smell of river otter scat is so unique, it's even given its own name, sprains. And you might smell the minty odor of wintergreen that's found in some birch trees. So there are lots of smells that you might encounter out in the walk in the woods. And if you happen upon a beaver scent mound, you might smell a strong musky odor, or one that's described as smelling like vanilla. And that's due to the castoreum that the beavers excrete in those scent mounds. And don't forget, many animals have very strong sense of smell, and they use smell as a means of communication. It's either communicating, hey, this is my territory, stay away, or it's advertising themselves as a mate during mating season. A few last thoughts. Are you bringing your dog along on the walk? It's wise to keep your dog on a leash. During mating season, coyotes often perceive medium or large-sized dogs as competitors and may get involved in a fight with that dog. And if you're in bear country or any place where there are bears, the presence of a dog more than doubles the odds of a bear encounter. Incidents involving unleashed dogs actually outnumber those involving leashed dogs by 6 to 1. So again, unleashed dogs often flush bears out and bring them back toward their owners to lead to an encounter. And this was actually just published in the Journal of Wildlife Management recently. So it's important that you leash your dog when you're out on a walk. And when you're hiking outdoors, always be aware of your surroundings. Scan your surroundings and don't wear headphones. You want to be able to listen to the sounds of the forest, but you also want to be aware of potential sounds that might indicate danger nearby. And also avoid strong fragrances that might attack bears. And if you're bringing any food along, keep it in sealed containers. So don't forget safety. Accidents do happen. You could trip or fall and break a bone. So you should let somebody know when you're out hiking, particularly if you're going solo. And you should have a trail map and a compass with you. Keep in mind that even though you have your cell phone, you may not have cell service in some areas, and you can't always rely on those maps on your phone. But your smartphone or a handheld GPS device can record your tracks and help you find your way back if you do get lost. And if you live in New Hampshire, get yourself a hike safe card, which you can get from the Fish and Game website. The $35 that you pay for a family hike safe card could save you thousands of dollars in the event that you need to be rescued if you were injured. So enjoy your hike in the woods, but stay safe. So again, get out there, enjoy the hike. We have many, many trails here at Eastman and throughout New Hampshire. And again, hiking is good for you both physically and mentally. So please enjoy it.